My name is Liora Marimont, and I have lived a life both gracious and guarded. At 68, with silver streaks that I wear like war medals and a spine carved from quiet storms, I have learned that dignity is best kept not in words, but in actions. After my husband passed 5 years ago, I remained in our countryside villa, Maison Lavande, a serene estate tucked between lilac fields and marble fountains. My daughter Arielle married young to a man I tolerated for her sake, Damon, a city slick charmer with perfect teeth and too much ambition for his own good. I never fully trusted Damon. Not because he wasn't intelligent or hardworking. But because he carried entitlement like a second skin. He spoke with the assumption that people owed him something. Especially women. Especially me. He never called me mother or even Liora. Always mom, clipped dry and distant, as if I were some antique furniture he was waiting to replace. But I endured him for Arielle, who believed, with her young heart, that love could fix arrogance. She was wrong. One quiet Friday in September, I had gone to Lyon for a charity event, a weekend fundraiser I had helped organize for local artists. It was an elegant affair, and I stayed overnight at the sponsor's chateau. I hadn't told the staff at home when I'd be back. I never had to. My estate was run like a well-tuned clock, faithful in its rhythm. But a headache struck me the next morning, and I decided to come home early. I missed my garden. I missed my late husband's favorite chair under the olive tree. And truthfully, I missed silence. As the taxi pulled up the curved stone driveway, something felt off. There were 3 strange cars parked along the front lawn. One of them a gaudy red convertible with glittered decals. The type of car you don't park beside 18th century statues unless you have absolutely no class. I stepped out, heels clicking softly on the gravel, and heard it. Music. Loud thumping bass lines coming from inside my villa. Voices laughing. Glasses clinking. I frowned. Had my staff organized a gathering without informing me? Highly unlikely. I entered through the side door, bypassing the main foyer, and walked through the corridor. My heels echoed like a warning bell. I paused outside the grand salon. The door was slightly ajar. Inside I saw them. 5 men, including Damon, lounging across my silk, upholstered furniture. Drinks in hand, shirts unbuttoned, sneakers on antique rugs. One was drinking straight from a bottle of my Chateau Margaux 1982, a wine I had been saving since before Arielle was born. Damon was sitting in my husband's armchair. Legs spread wide, a cigar in one hand, phone in the other, recording a video.
Yo, fellas! Check this out! The Lark lifestyle!
This is what happens when you marry smart! He grinned into the camera, spinning around to show off my art collection, as if it were his. My vision blurred. I didn't speak immediately. I just watched. The way you might watch a forest fire swallow an orchard. One of the men noticed me and elbowed Damon. He turned mid-laugh, and his smile froze. "Oh, Mom," he said, standing awkwardly, the cigar slipping between his fingers. "Liora," I corrected. My voice was calm, but laced with steel. That's what I prefer to be called in my own home. The room fell silent. You could hear the ice melting in their glasses. He stammered. "I thought you were out of town for the weekend." Arielle said. "Did I invite you here, Damon?" He looked at his friends, as if they might defend him. They didn't. I mean, we were just hanging out. No harm done. I stepped forward and plucked the wine bottle from his friend's hand. He shrank into the couch. "This bottle is worth more than your car," I said coolly. "It was a gift from a friend who passed away in the war. You drank it like soda pop." Damon rolled his eyes slightly, muttering, "It's just a bottle." "No," I said, "it's a boundary. One you've bulldozed." He tried to lighten the mood. "Simon, Liora, we're family. It's just a chill weekend." Didn't mean any disrespect. But disrespect doesn't need intent to exist. I looked around, at the cushions on the floor, the half-eaten charcuterie platter likely raided from my kitchen, the muddy footprints near the rug Arielle and I had picked out together. My estate had become their playground. I didn't yell. That's not my way. I simply turned to the staff. Poor Maurice was hovering by the hallway, eyes wide with embarrassment, and said, "Show these gentlemen to the gate." "But," Damon started, "you have 5 minutes to leave. Take your memories with you." They grumbled, but left. Damon threw a bitter glance over his shoulder, expecting me to beg him to stay, to explain, to forgive. I didn't. That night, I sat alone in the library, lights dimmed, fingers tracing the old spines of leather-bound classics. The house felt wounded, not just violated, but mocked. Damon didn't just trespass. He tried to own something that was never his. He saw wealth, not history. Possession, not love. I built this home with a man I adored. We filled it with music, art, laughter, not this brash echo of drunken boasts. And that's when the decision took root, soft at first, like a whisper in the dark. He needed to learn, not through anger, not through confrontation. No, I would teach him the way the wind teaches the trees to bend, slowly, inevitably, and with purpose. There's a dangerous kind of silence that follows betrayal. Not the kind that comes from suppression or fear, but the kind that simmers. Measured, thoughtful, patient. The kind that waits. After Damon and his friends were escorted off the estate like disobedient schoolboys, I said nothing. Not to him. Not to Arielle. Not even to the staff. I resumed my routine as if nothing had happened. But inside, I was laying bricks, slowly constructing the walls of consequence he would soon find himself trapped behind. For the next week, Damon did not reach out. Not a call. Not a message. Not an apology. Instead, I watched from a distance as he uploaded photos from my villa, boasting online about his weekend at the estate, crafting captions that painted him as the generous son-in-law, basking in the luxuries of his wife's family inheritance. His friends commented with fire emojis and inside jokes about the wine and the art. He was using my home as a prop in his theater of self-importance. And the most infuriating part, Arielle believed it. He just had a few friends over. "Mother," she said during brunch. She had come by for a casual visit. We sat in the sunroom sipping chamomile, and for a moment I thought she'd brought it up on her own, perhaps to apologize on his behalf. But no, she defended him. "He told me you were furious." "I'm sorry he didn't ask first, but it's not like he trashed the place." I looked at her. My only child. She had her father's eyes, calm and warm, but there was a veil over them now. A kind of blind loyalty, the same one I once had when I was her age. "He didn't trash the place," I agreed gently, placing my teacup down. "He simply invaded it." She blinked. "Mother, this home is not a hotel. It's not a showroom for his ego. It's my life's work. Your father's legacy." She looked uncomfortable. "He didn't mean to disrespect anything. Damon just wanted to feel included." There it was, that same excuse we make for those who bulldoze our boundaries. They meant well. But intention without integrity is just manipulation. That night, I went up to my late husband's study, a room I hadn't entered in months. Dust lay like memory across his old desk. I sat down, opened the ledger drawer, and pulled out the folder marked Estate Holdings Inheritance. I had made changes to the ownership documents years ago, quietly, after my husband's death. Contrary to popular assumption, Maison Lavandi had not been passed down to Arielle. Not yet. It was still in my name, held in a private trust, and legally shielded from marital claim. Damon thought he had married into wealth. What he didn't know was that he hadn't touched a cent of it. Over the next few days, I prepared. I called my lawyer, Mr. Valen, a sharp-eyed man who had been in our family's confidence for decades. I had him review every clause, every contingency in the trust. I want it all resealed, I told him. Stronger, ironclad, no loopholes. And I want a clause added, a provision that disqualifies any beneficiary proven to have abused their access to the property. He arched a brow. Abused how? Let's just say documented masseuse. I smiled because I had footage. Yes, Maison Lavandi, though it wears elegance like a crown, is not naive. It has discreet security cameras, installed after an incident with a drunk caterer years ago. They're invisible, silent, and thorough. I pulled the hard drive from the system and sat down to watch. What I saw made my blood run cold. Damon and his friends mocking my late husband's portrait, laughing at the old, money vibes of the decor. One of them took a cushion from the guest suite and tried to skateboard down the marble hallway. Another joked about finally breaking in the rich in-law's pad. It wasn't a party. It was a performance of conquest. This wasn't about relaxing or bonding. This was about Damon marking territory that wasn't his. I clipped the footage and saved it to a USB. I titled the file, Entitlement, Exhibit A. I didn't stop there. I interviewed the staff quietly. Maurice told me Damon had given them the weekend off, but made veiled threats about their jobs if they told me. He said, "Don't worry, your boss is old money. She won't notice. Just keep it quiet and I'll toss you a bonus." Maurice was shaking as he spoke. He felt guilty. I didn't blame him. "I'm glad you told me," I said. "You did the right thing." By the end of the week, I had a portfolio of evidence. Security footage, witness statements from the staff, screenshots from Damon's social media posts, text messages he'd sent Arielle boasting about how he'd be running that place someday. But I didn't send it to anyone. Not yet, no. Revenge, like self-A, must rise slowly, or it collapses. The final preparation was psychological. I invited Damon and Arielle for dinner, a quiet one. Just the three of us. A peace offering. Arielle was delighted. Damon smirked when he arrived, wearing designer shoes and a smug expression. "Nice to see you, Mom," he said. "It's Liora." I corrected again, but with a smile this time. "Come, let's eat." I served them my husband's favorite meal. Cocoa vin with truffle mashed potatoes and heirloom tomatoes from the garden. Damon praised the wine. He bragged about a new business deal he'd closed. I let him talk. Let him feel safe again. Let him think I had moved on. What he didn't know was that everything was already set in motion. That night, after they left, I wrote a single sentence in my leather-bound journal. "You may walk into a queen's court like a jester, but you will leave stripped of your crown." The storm was ready, and the next invitation I'd send would be his undoing. They say revenge is best served cold, but I preferred mine served on fine china with a glass of vintage Bordeaux and a knowing smile. It was time. 2 weeks after Damon's visit to my villa, I sent out invitations, elegant cream-colored envelopes sealed with a wax M, the Marmont family crest. Inside, handwritten notes inviting a dozen guests to a private appreciation dinner at Maison Lavandi, hosted by yours truly. Among the guests, 2 of Damon's close friends from the party, my family's longtime lawyer, Mr. Valen, a few local dignitaries and business associates, and, of course, Damon and Arielle. I made the dinner sound like a gesture of goodwill, a soft return to harmony after the misunderstanding. Damon bit the bait so quickly I barely had time to reel him in. His response was instant, looking forward to it. "Thanks for being gracious, Liora. Means a lot." A smug little emoji and all. He thought he had won. That his charm and silence had diffused the situation. He thought I was just an old woman clinging to manners. Poor boy. The night of the dinner, Maison Lavande looked breathtaking. The gardens were lit with soft golden lanterns. A string quartet played near the terrace. The long dining table was set under the stars, glinting with crystal ivory and freshly cut peonies. I wore my finest navy silk gown, the one my husband used to say made me look like royalty. Tonight, I didn't just feel like royalty. I felt like justice. Damon arrived with Arielle on his arm, wearing a tailored suit a bit too tight and a grin far too wide. "Beautiful night, huh?" he said, kissing my cheek as if we were lifelong friends. I returned the kiss politely. "Yes, perfect weather for clarity." He blinked. "For what? Nothing?" I said with a gentle smile. "Come, let's begin." The dinner began beautifully. Lauder flowed. Wine poured. Everyone praised the duck de l'orange and rosemary potatoes. Damon was holding court, retelling a story from their vacation in Italy. A story that, ironically, happened on my dime. He even raised a toast to strong families and generous hearts. Several guests clapped. Arielle beamed with pride. Damon looked pleased with himself. That was when I stood. Thank you, Damon, I said, lifting my glass. You've always had such a way with words. But tonight, I'd like to show you what actions look like. The music stopped. The mood shifted, just a hair. I turned toward one of my staff, who rolled a vintage television into the garden, elegant, old-fashioned, charmingly out of place. A silver tray held a USB drive. This, I said, plugging it in, is a little memory from the last time you visited my home uninvited. The screen lit up. Footage played. High, definition, silent, and undeniable. There was Damon lounging in my husband's armchair, cigar in hand. There he was, mocking our ancestral portrait. Dead guy still watching me like I owe him rent. Laughter. There he was, telling one of his friends. In 5 years this'll all be mine anyway. Old ladies don't live forever. I didn't look at Damon. I didn't need to. The gas from the guests. The color draining from Arielle's face. That was enough. When the clip ended, I stepped forward. My husband built this home with his hands. Every brick, every beam. You treated it like a frat house. Damon stood up, face pale. This is insane. You went through footage to humiliate me. That's illegal, Mr. Valen, seated to my left, cleared his throat. Actually, the security system is disclosed in the staff handbook and visible from entry signage. Legal and admissible. Damon turned to Arielle. Are you really going to let her do this? She's sabotaging us. Arielle looked down at her lap. Did you really say those things? Ari baby, I was joking. I raised my hand. We're not finished. I pulled out an envelope and handed it to him. This is your formal notice. You are hereby banned from entering Maison Lavande or accessing any family assets. He scoffed. You can't do that. Arielle's your daughter. It's hers, not yours. I smiled. Wrong again. A Mr. Valen stood adjusting his glasses. As per the updated trust documents, the estate remains solely under Madame Marimont's name. Furthermore, due to documented abuse of access and verbal intent to exploit the estate, the clause regarding disqualification has been enacted. Damon staggered, literally. You wrote me out of the will. You were never in it. The air turned to ice. A few guests made excuses to leave early. Damon's friends were already slinking away. Arielle was silent, frozen in shame and shock. I wanted you to see what arrogance looks like from the outside, I said quietly, looking him in the eye. You treated me like a footnote. But I was the one holding the pen. He stepped forward suddenly, voice sharp. You think this is over? I'll talk to Arielle. We'll see who gets written out. But he'd made one final mistake. He assumed Arielle was still on his side. She stood up, calm, pale, quietly furious. You lied to me. You told me it was just a dinner with friends. You never said you filmed in the study. You never said you mocked my father's portrait. Ari, come on. No, she said. You embarrassed me. You used my family for status. You used me? He tried to grab her wrist. She pulled away. You're lucky all she did was throw you out, she whispered. The guards escorted him to the gate. He didn't fight. He didn't speak. He didn't look back. Just a soaked, furious silhouette under the garden lights, as rain finally began to fall, soft and cold. Later that night, the guests gone, the music faded, the villa quiet once more. I stood in the hallway outside my husband's study. Arielle approached me. She didn't speak at first. Her eyes were red but dry. You knew, she said. You always knew who he was? I hoped I was wrong. She nodded. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize, I said, wrapping my arm around her. You just needed to see. We stood together in silence. No accusations. No, I told you so. Just the quiet grace of a mother and daughter finding their footing again. Damon left that night with a bruised ego, a wet suit, and no audience left to impress. And Maison Lavande, my home, breathed again. The tension he carried like cologne had vanished from the air. His laughter, which once felt like a hammer against our legacy, was gone. For the first time in a long time, I could hear the villa's soul again. Quiet. Still. Whole. But the hardest part wasn't evicting a man like Damon. The hardest part was watching my daughter put her broken heart back together. In the weeks that followed, Arielle stayed with me. At first, she didn't speak much. She wandered the gardens in the morning, often barefoot, as though she was searching for the version of herself she'd left behind in her 20s. The version that hadn't yet been told to calm down, or be supportive, or trust him because he knows better. We didn't push each other. We coexisted. Tea, walks, quiet dinners. It wasn't until the first rain of October that she finally cracked open. "I don't know who I am without him," she whispered one night, curled beside the fireplace. I thought we were building a future together, but all this time he was just building a stage. I sat beside her, taking her hand. He built a mirror, Arielle, one where he stood front and center, and everyone else was just background. She nodded slowly. "He made me feel like I had to choose between you and him. And now..." She met my eyes, and for the first time there was no fog, just clarity. "Now I choose me?" Damon tried, of course. Cowards often do. He sent long, rambling texts, late-night voicemails with, "I was drunk," and "You misunderstood." He even sent roses, expensive gaudy ones with gold-tipped petals, to the villa. Arielle didn't reply. The last message he sent her was shorty. "One day you'll regret choosing her over your husband." She showed it to me, then deleted it. "Let him live in regret, not us," she said. I could have wept. I took steps, too. Legally, Damon was locked out of the estate, the trust, the inheritance. But emotional doors have a way of reopening if we're not careful. So I sat down with Arielle and rewrote my will. With her. Line by line. Clause by clause, we built a future together. She wasn't just a name on paper anymore. She was a partner. An heir not of wealth, but of legacy. I showed her the ledgers, the art histories, the maintenance records of the vineyards, and the names of every staff member, some of whom had worked for our family longer than she'd been alive. "This is yours now, too," I told her, "not to use, to protect." She nodded, "Like you did." Eventually, life settled. We hosted small gatherings, poetry nights, jazz under the stars, charity auctions for the local schools. Not parties for show, but celebrations of substance. People who had once been charmed by Damon stopped asking about him. His mask had cracked in public. There was no returning from that. Arielle even started teaching art therapy at a nearby women's shelter, a passion she had buried under years of supporting his startups and side hustles. And me? I returned to my garden, my books, my music. But something had changed. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a widow holding a castle of ghosts. I felt like a woman who had won, not through cruelty, but through clarity. One evening, just as summer began to fade, I sat in the olive grove behind the villa, the very spot where my husband had once told me, "A strong house is nothing without a stronger heart." The wind rustled through the trees, and I heard footsteps. Arielle. She brought me a cup of lavender tea and sat beside me, folding her legs under her shawl. "Do you think he ever really loved me?" she asked. I didn't lie. "I think he loved the way you made him feel. Powerful, admired, forgiven. But that isn't the same as loving you." She was quiet for a while. Then she said, "I hope he learned something from all of this." I looked out toward the setting sun. "Some people don't learn," I said softly, "but they lose. And sometimes that's enough." And so, peace returned. Not the peace of forgetting, but the deeper peace of remembering with strength. Maison Lavandi stood tall, its stones weathered and wise, no longer a place for pretenders, only for those who understood that respect isn't inherited, it's earned. Final scene, Arielle, and I walked through the halls one afternoon, sunlight dancing on the marble floors. We stopped by my husband's portrait. She looked up at it, then at me. "I think he'd be proud of you." I smiled. "I think he'd be proud of us."